screen share. So good. Well, welcome all on this Sunday, bright and sunny here in Fountain Inn. And we are just ever so thrilled and honored to have Gilbert with us. Welcome, Gilbert. He was just here with us at LaGrasse for several days. We were doing a Meditate Upstate session, which we do last Sunday of every month. And we invite people from the community that have different spiritual paths to come and share their path and share their practice, be it a meditation or a mantra or walking meditation, etc. So Gilbert came, and he is a deep devotee of Siddha Yoga, and gave just the most beautiful talk and spoke a little bit about his experiences, spiritual experiences on that path. And then we had just a real nice community get together. So for any of you that are close by, we'll be doing another one next Sunday. Joan Craig will be sharing her path of Kriya Yoga. So it's always nice to bring people together from different paths and to share and to learn from each other. So today, Gilbert, who is not only a Vedic astrologer, but also Western astrologer, and he is schooled in many different healing arts. And as I mentioned, his path is Siddha Yoga. He will be sharing with us some of the trends that he has spotted astrologically for the U.S. since 1776, keyed around some certain events, and I think also taking a look at currently where the U.S. is. As you may or may not know, most of the major countries where we have the date and time of independence, in this case, signing the Declaration of Independence, we can draw up a birth chart, if you will, for that country, and then watch its progress and also do some forward predictions. So, Gilbert, if you'd like to say anything, a few more words about yourself or your past. He also does wonderful Vedic astrology readings for individuals. So if any of you are interested, I'll ask Gilbert to also put in the chat box how you can contact him, or I can put your email address, Gilbert, in there for folks. But I'd like to just turn it over to you. And again, if you'd like to say a few more words about yourself and your background, and show us what you have on Vedic astrology.
Okay, so basically, I met a guru about 27 years ago from India, and I learned how to do meditation through that. Guru Maitri Vilasananda, and I've been following that path as my spiritual path, and I started being interested in astrology actually when I was studying personality theory in college, and in the 80s, and
good morning, Sudha.
And I just started to see connections. I started to see connections that have to do with birth signs, and I was studying it for a long time as a hobby, and then in around 2000, I went to a healer because I'd hurt my back, and he was telling me that I should rest for a little while as a carpenter, and I should do something else, maybe something more quiet. And so he just, I told him I loved astrology, but I never actually did it for people on a professional level. And he just said, well, I'm going to send you my clients. And so he sent me his clients, and I was living near an ashram where there were people coming there from all over the United States and mostly Europe and Australia and things like that. And I started doing readings, and then that's how I started to become a professional astrologer, so to speak, even though it was something I loved and always looked at for almost 20 years before I even started doing it. So that's anyway. So today I was just gonna go look at the symbols, the things that were going on at around the birth of the United States during, which started around the time that the Declaration of Independence was ratified, and the start of the Revolutionary War, because Pluto, which because a lot of the symbols that were a lot of the planets where they were the symbols that come through the meanings they're almost exactly the same as they are now, and they've been like this for about 6 years now, and we're coming to a point where astrologically Pluto, which takes around 245 years to go around, has now reached a very critical point in for where the United States was, from where the United States was born. So, let's see. So the birth chart is around, well, July 4th, 1776, and that's about when the Declaration of Independence was signed, and when the United States declared, and its colonies declared their independence, dissolving their connection with Britain, Great Britain. At that time, Pluto. So in Vedic astrology, there are 20, besides the 12 signs of the zodiac, there are 27 what they call mansions, nakshatras, and those and so those are have even more specific meaning. And at that time, Pluto was in the nakshatra called Uttara Ashada, which is kind of it's around where the last part of Sagittarius and the beginning of Capricorn, and it's a nakshatra its symbol is the elephant tusk, and so that indicates the Ganesh in Vedic astrology. That's Ganesh, one of one of his attributes is the removal of obstacles. And Pluto tends to rule groups, whether it's a motorcycle gang or a nation, or Pluto also represents regeneration, death, rebirth, transformation. So in Uttarashada, another word for that is the universal star. It's humanitarian. It's where Abraham Lincoln's moon was. It's concerned with humanitarian dealings here. So as the Declaration of Independence was written under the influence of that. Now Thomas Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence, and it just so happened that his Uranus, when he was born, was exactly in Uttarashada, and he was born in 1743, something like that. But by the time he wrote the Declaration of Independence, which was around 1775, Pluto, in its motion, came right on top of where that Uranus was, which is in that area of Uttarashada, where have to do with humanitarian values. Now so of the 27 nakshatras, there's a very specific place in Uttarashada that's called Abhijit. It's called Abhijit because according to this book, Bepari's Nakshatras, it's where Krishna ruled. It's where Krishna declared that area that was his nakshatra. And so it has to do with overcoming the dark forces. It has to do with being victorious over dharma. and fighting the Asuric forces. Now, whether or not that's what the United States was doing, this is definitely where this is the astrology of it. So that was also reflected. These ideas of Uttarashada and Abhijit, the humanitarian ideas, were reflected in the Declaration of Independence. Where all men are created equal, and that among those are, and that we have inalienable rights, the liberty, the pursuit of happiness, and these things. So this is all the humanitarian. It's a very humanitarian time. So the breaking of the United States with Great Britain and declaring itself a sovereign state where we're no longer under where the United States is no longer under the rule of what they felt was suppressive, which of course at the human level comes off as overly taxed or just not being allowed to do certain things and so on and so forth. So yeah. Let's see. So as Jefferson's planet of revolution. So Uranus is a planet of revolution. They consider it revolution. It's actually the only planet that where all the planets are spinning on their axis like this. Uranus is actually spinning sideways. It's not spinning us. So it's even its form is kind of revolutionary, and it's been shown to be in prominence during revolutionary times like the French Revolution. It comes into prominence. So here is Jefferson writing with humanitarian ideals and declaring that the United States and its colonies have rights that are inalienable and come from God, the Creator. Come from the Creator, and we're breaking off and we're going to do our own thing. And this is all happening with Uranus in Uttarashada, in Abhijit, in a very humanitarian, where the ancient Vedas, and certainly in the Vedas, the meaning of the nakshatras have come from Vedic writings. And probably the best book I've read on this is actually Radha's book called The Divine Forces of the Lunar Nakshatras, where she did extensive research and profound research in how the Rig Veda has the narrative and the symbology of these nakshatras and how they formed into a school of have become the school of part of the school of astrology regarding the 27 nakshatras. So here it is. Here we are. This is the drama that was happening at that time, and the thing is that right now Pluto is exactly in that place, and it's been there since April of 2018, and it will be there until 2026. And so the question is, what's going on? We've been through a lot of tumultuous global things with the pandemic and a lot of tumultuous things so the question is, what a lot of people are looking to the United States, to see where it will go with its government, and actually I've never experienced in my life such a division between left and right. The politics of this country. Not that I'm really into politics that much. I mean, it seems like I was pushed into it a little bit, but I'm so that's I don't know, how is that clear? I mean, is there any questions about any of that I talked about? No? Okay. Let's see.
I'm wondering, Gilbert, if you're using any other planets their current position, like Saturn. I know you probably don't use Rahu and Ketu, but any other planet that maybe moves a bit more quickly that could help us hone in or give some more detailed insight as to what we might expect between now and 2026? Or do you primarily go with these outer planets?
Yeah, sure. So another thing that was happening, actually, which is going to be happening again in a few years, is that the wars, the revolutionary, there's another nakshatra called Kritika, which is a very, they call it a fierce nakshatra. It has to do with cutting away, with burning off, and so when during the Revolutionary War, Uranus, Venus, and Jupiter were in this nakshatra. So that's a very fierce nakshatra. It's also warring. It's also so that's Jupiter will be in that nakshatra soon. It will be in that nakshatra starting in actually in Uranus and Jupiter will be in nakshatra starting in May of 2024. And between Uranus and Jupiter there, it'll last until April 2027. So basically, the most powerful planets, some of the most powerful planets that move nations, that move big groups, like the outer planets, they will be in basically what we had during the Revolutionary War, and it's very close. I mean, Saturn happened to be in Leo at that time, in an area of Leo that was near Neptune, and Saturn and Neptune were in the same sign of Leo during the Revolutionary War. Now that's one thing that's different, in that Saturn now is just went into what I believe is the fourth house of the United States chart, and that is so that is where the moon is. So the moon in United States is Aquarian, and it's always, the United States has always welcomed immigrants. It's always welcomed people from all over different walks of life, and that's a very open moon, open to humanity, the Aquarian moon, the Aquarius moon. There is, when Saturn goes over the moon in Vedic astrology, it's considered a testing. It's considered a time when there needs to be some awareness to move forward. There are some challenges with respect to. It's called Sade Sate, which stands for 7.5, because it happens for 7.5 years, 2.5 years before it gets to the sign of the moon, and about 2.5 years after it leaves the sign of the moon. And so Saturn takes 2.5 years per sign. So it takes 29.5 years approximately to traverse the whole horoscope. So now we're in a time here in the United States, as we could see, there's a lot of, economically, the war in Ukraine, the war we just got out of in Afghanistan. There's so much going on. There's so much. We're really being tested. There's a possibility of other currencies coming in instead of the dollar. There's a lot of churning. There's a lot of churning now. And another thing about when Saturn goes over the moon, I've noticed in the people that I've counseled and in my own life, is it becomes a time when one looks at one's faith and what one really believes in, and whether the faith is based on maybe a belief, or whether it's really ingrained. And I feel like it's a time that one is brought down to the bones of who they are, of who, and so that they may release, because Saturn helps to release and separate, so that they may release that which is blocking them from a greater awareness of who they are at a deeper level. And and sometimes it's not so comfortable. I mean, it's usually a difficult time emotionally. The moon is our emotions, is our conditioning, is our the manas. It's the mind that goes on every day, that turns on, and what how could that be cleared? So so now for the United States, this is the first time that Saturn has been, although Saturn has been on that moon every 30 years since the United States was born. As the person, we probably go through it. We might go through it twice. We go through it twice at least, and maybe 3 times sometimes. But now this is the first time that Saturn has been on that moon with Pluto having come all the way around to where it was, to when this country was formed. So the ideals of this country have been very, very well. The fact that they included the creator and the sovereignty of the sacred sovereignty of the individual is a very high ideal. And so maybe that's what will be pressed as a nation, has the consciousness of the nation to find out where we stand with respect to those ideals that were created. That's my opinion, but I would certainly love to hear anybody else's if they have. So that's some of the things that we're in for. Yeah. Let's see what else. The thing that's a little different is that during the Revolutionary War, we were also under, in Vedic astrology, there's a time, there are periods for the planets to take prominence in our stage of life. So in our lives, let's say Mars takes over at some point, then Venus does for 20 years, then Saturn does for 19, then Jupiter for 17, 16, Mercury for 17, etc. So when the United States actually had the Revolutionary War, it was Mars, which is also very, very strongly, it's very strongly, it's Mars, it's Aries, it's the god of war for one thing, but at a higher level, it's the spiritual warrior, the one that removes, through experience, learns who they are through the challenges given in life. In fact, the idea of Mars is that Mars and Ganesh was asked by his parents, Parvati and Shiva, who can circumnavigate the universe 3 times first. And so Ganesh just went around his parents and immediately got all the knowledge. And Mars took off to experience everything, and through experience gained the knowledge of the universe. So Mars is about action. Mars is about that was that was part of the war. Actually, when the beginning of 2016 is when the United States was in the Mars Mars. And we did get involved in some wars in the Middle East, but we've been involved with those wars for a while. So for the future, there's definitely some soul searching that as a nation we'll be going through, and what are the forms of that? Now, the good part about Uttara Ashada, well, there's a lot of good part, but is that every nakshatra has a power, which is called the Shakti, and the power of Uttara Ashada is Apradrishya Shakti, which is alliance. So when the revolution already happened, we had the French and the Spanish were aligned with us, which were very powerful empires in their own right at that time. And so now we still have that. So there are alliances that we have, perhaps with nations, or even with the unseen, because these alliances work through, as long as the intent is for the goodness of all, is for our humanitarian values. The forces, the Vishva Devas, the forces of goodness come in and help with the victory over those forces that are trying to squelch the life, so to speak, and bring it under their control. So so that's at some level, this is what's happening. There are many interpretations to the pandemic and all these things, and I don't really. I guess we could all look at that in our own way. Anyway. Any other questions?
Yeah, I'm wondering, Gilbert, it might be helpful because many people here are from the West, and so they're used to perhaps Western astrology and have had a Western birth chart reading. Maybe you could explain a little bit how Eastern or Vedic astrology, Jyotish, differs from Western, or some of the kind of major differences of these two systems, especially when it comes to, well, it would also affect country, but, a lot of people are thinking their individual birth chart and following their sun sign and things like this. Could you maybe just say a few words about how, because you've practiced both, some of the big differences between these two systems?
Okay, sure. So the difference, basically, for people born within the last 100 years, is that in Vedic astrology, the degrees of the degrees go back 23 degrees approximately. So if you're actually, let's say you're born Aries in April, but actually it's the beginning of April, and so you would be the sun would actually be in Pisces, and that has to do with the difference between what is called a tropical zodiac, which is what is used in Western astrology, and a sidereal zodiac, which is what is used in Vedic astrology, and it's actually, that's the zodiac that the astronomers use as well. So what that has to do with is the motion of one of the three motions of the Earth. So the Earth spins around its axis and spins around the sun, but then it has a third motion, which has to do with its axis. So the axis of the Earth, it's spinning. So the Earth is spinning around its axis, and it's also spinning around the sun. But this axis also spins around itself like this, and this takes 25,000 years around. What that does is it changes the relationship of where the Earth is with respect to the constellations as it goes around. It's called the precession of the equinox, and that's the official name also in astronomy. And so what that means is that 2,000 years ago, if you were born on December 25th, you were a Capricorn. But since 2,000 years ago, this axis has shifted. And now it's brought the Earth back where it's no longer in Capricorn. It's now on December 25th. If you look from the point of view of the Earth, the sun, from the point of view of the Earth, looking at the sun, behind the sun now is Sagittarius. And 2,000 years, and I guess around 300 years from now, around 300, 350 years from now, when officially we are in the Aquarian age, what that'll mean is that on the first day of spring in the Northern Hemisphere, the sun, when we look at the sun on the first day of spring, which is spring in the Northern Hemisphere, the sun will be, behind the sun will be the constellation Aquarius. It will no longer be Pisces. That's why we're in the Piscean age now, because we're still seeing Pisces on the first day of spring behind there. So that's one major difference. Philosophically, I think that Western astrologers have a lot of different philosophical perspectives on their astrology, but I think in Vedic, basically it's about the evolution of the soul through lifetimes, the reincarnation of the soul through lifetimes, to gain awareness of itself as the self, or just to gain supreme awareness of consciousness, however you want to call it. You know, that's basically it. And there are four major goals of life. Artha, which is gaining resources, having the resources that one needs to live. Kama, which is having pleasure, getting pleasure from life. Dharma, which is doing the right thing. So dharma would be doing the right thing, that which benefits oneself and others, and taking action towards towards being beneficial to others and to oneself, to expand within this conscious play of consciousness that is life. And then all those three support moksha, which is the awareness of the liberation, the awareness of one's liberation, has a supreme being incarnating on earth. So those are the three goals of Vedic astrology. Well, it's not only in Vedic astrology; it's also in different prayer. It's in different chants and prayers in the Vedic literature. So those are some of the differences. Of course, the aspects are a little different. Technically, you know, they don't really deal with squares. Well, it's just there's just some technical differences. The thing is that it works too. Western astrology works as well. Works also. I went into Vedic because I was finding many holes that I couldn't explain, and I would just not look at astrology for 6 months, a year even, because it would frustrate me that I couldn't find why certain things were not working out the way, following the rules. And when I found Vedic astrology, because of the way they use what's called the dashas, which is, let's say you're born on the stage of life. The day you're born, and there's a stage of life, and slowly this stage of life unfolds and changes, and there are different, set changes, like a play. There's a set change, and there's another set change, and then different people come into one's life and leave. Well, in Vedic astrology, the planets, one planet takes over a certain amount of time, a certain amount of years, and that planet is the prominent planet that works in your chart, that works in your chart. So whether it's the people in your life, the stage setting, and even the inner landscape of the mind at some level. In fact, in Vedic astrology, the planet is called Graha, which means grasp. So the planets grasp our minds. And I still think that we're about being liberated from that as well, of course, because we're actually liberated. Astrology, I see as a great tool for getting to know oneself and others and life. But we are also independent beings. We're not tethered forever to astrological forces or anything like that. I mean, ultimately, we are even free from that at the deepest level, and I know that for sure. So at some point, these planets take over, and we go into a different phase. And when I started noticing that in people's charts, I said, "Wow, this is amazing," because it began to fill in a lot of the holes that I felt in Western astrology. I mean, in a way that I was amazed. I was amazed that this would work, and so I was completely sold into Vedic, and I started studying Vedic full on, and using it as the foundation. I still use a few ideas of Western that have helped me do some things, but it's very technical. So yeah, those are some of the differences. I mean, the nakshatras are also very rich in meaning. Besides the 12 signs, the nakshatras, the 27 nakshatras have I've not seen a more insightful look into a person's personality and looking at their moon nakshatra as a single factor. Looking into a person's moon where the moon was and which nakshatra is an amazing way of getting to know somebody with a of knowing of a personality and such, and I've noticed that in pretty much every reading I've done in myself, and it's really amazing actually. So those are some of the
So if
some
you
of the
look,
differences. Yeah.
if you look at the sky, and you see that certain planets are coming into action, certain nakshatras, moon is moving in different constellations. So they are basically uh, th- the same for a particular region or particular place, because the Earth is also a globe. So around the globe you can see different views in different moments of time. Amazingly, that's how we define time also on Earth. Yes, 24 hours, that means a position on the globe, basically, looking to a different sky, basically. So I want to kind of to put together the complexity of the sky looking at Earth with those people living on Earth in that moment of time or in that particular sport, but born in different times, and therefore redistribution of the activities of the sky will play differently for them. So it creates that complexity, infinite complexity in their relations, being in the same sport, under the same sky, having different, the same data, having the same universal data influencing them, but having different results because of their entry onto the sport. So they were born in different times. So the whole redistribution of force is different. And plus to this, there is as you were describing, the USA, and its own destiny, its own kind of play with the sky. So you are now in the US with all your complexities, yes, facing an amazing, is it like this, something like this? So Just trying to,
Yes,
yeah.
absolutely. I think I know what you're saying. I mean, there have been a lot of studies with twins
Ah,
who are basically born at the exact same time in the exact same place, and yet in some ways their lives parallel but also different, you know. And so what's that about? I mean, they do have a way of looking at siblings in Vedic astrology where the elder sibling gets one house and the other siblings get another house. And there is distinctions made, but there is it is complex that way where you're born depending you could be born at the exact same time as somebody in another part of the country, but in another part of the world, but where the houses that the planets fall on will still be different. And so let's say if the sun falls in the 10th house for one person, whereas it's in the 6th house for another person, and they're both, let's say they're both Leo rising. Well, no, let's say that they would have different rising signs. Just have different rising signs, and then one person would be a lot more, let's say, extroverted, and might be a little more extroverted, less extroverted. So it does, the difference of the place does affect where those same planets, how they manifest in within the scope of one's life, whether it's their first house, their personality, their 6th house, their everyday work and chores and health, and their 10th house, their, let's say, their career, their 9th house, their so it does fall into different
And I think,
areas.
Gilbert, this is one of the reasons why for Vedic astrology, you need to have your exact birth time, unlike
Yeah,
Western, right? So birth
yeah,
time and birthplace becomes important. And
right,
that'll tell us what the stellar planets were at the
right,
time, that exact
absolutely.
location. And just on this twin thing, so this is a mystery, right? Because I've known people who have had twins, and as you said, they can be born within a minute of each other or less, and yet very different. But another way that Vedic astrology is different than Western is we have something called amshas, or sections of the chart of areas of life that get blown up into their own separate chart. So a whole separate chart for career, for children, for
Right,
spiritual paths. There's 15 to 20 of these, and many of them will switch within
right,
just seconds, if not a minute of each other. And so
yeah,
oftentimes, and I haven't tested this, Gilbert, because I don't have enough data to do so, but I have my teacher, Dr. Charik, has done a lot of work in this. If you go into those subcharts, then you begin to see some differences in personality and also some differences in the life. So I don't know
yeah,
your experience, Gilbert, but theoretically, that can make the difference. Not theoretically, that will make the difference if we have the exact
yeah,
even second of the birth time, not just minute.
yeah. Yes, yes. I haven't had experience with that either because I haven't actually had any twins, so I haven't pushed into that. But yeah, the harmonic chart, they call them harmonic, I think harmonic charts or ashmas, but also harmonic charts. They I've had experience with that, and one chart will focus on the 10th house, one chart will focus on the spouse and partnership chart, another chart, yeah. And yeah, they're definitely they are just like a note, just like a sound has harmonics to it. So to make that note, so the birth chart is the main note, and then there are components that create that help to create the note the way it is. And that's how I think of the Vedic harmonic charts as well, where they enhance the understanding of the birth chart. I've looked at Navamsha, which is the partnership chart, a lot, because that question comes out a lot, and I've looked at the career a lot, and sure, yeah, I've had definitely, it definitely comes up that way, and that's the way you're right, that's the way the twins would be perfectly handled, because even a minute of difference would manifest in a chart that's broken down into 27, into the 16 or the 32, that would change so much of the chart, and that's where it would manifest best.
There is
Right
also
on.
this kind of question about space, because one thing is time. Time and space cannot be, kind of shared by the same being. So the same substance cannot occupy the same time and the same space. So, and that's why there is a kind of spreading in time. But what is interesting when the twins are there, if we examine this more closely, we will see that they cannot occupy the same space. First of all, they move into different locations. So locations give us totally different dynamics of the sky influencing on the global Earth. We take Earth as globe. That means you can view the sky from all possible angles or fall all possible directions, and you will have all possible varieties of relations. So why would we wonder even that two similar born beings would never have the same life? Definitely not. They would have to deal with different issues, with different influences of the sky. If you move to the southern hemisphere, you would have totally different life, I presume, so to say, or something. I'm just
Yeah,
wondering, throwing
yeah,
this wonder.
that manifests in the houses, the location, because just to get where the planets are, it's always from the point of view of the Earth. To see, like, okay, so my moon is in Scorpio, so that means that when I was born, if I looked at my moon when I was born, behind there would be Scorpio, and the nakshatra was Anuradha, and so that's where it was. And so from the point of view, it's always from the point of view of the Earth. If For all the planets, so the moon is here, Venus is there, and then the time and the location creates the houses, where it falls in the houses. And so um, yeah, so depending on where you are on the globe, that shifts where the houses, the 12 houses of the astrology, where the planets would come in. So which houses had the planets go in. So you're right, it would, that's how it changes. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, I was just going to say, other questions or comments. I know, Kate, you've had your mic open for a little bit. Please just feel free to ask Gilbert.
Yes, I have a question. In Western astrology, tropical astrology, I'm Sagittarius, but in sidereal astrology, I'm Scorpio. And I'd like to know, with the nakshatras, would you see the same with the precession of the equinoxes, that, a person born in a nakshatra, with the influence of a planet, would in fact, if you take into account the precession, would actually be in another nakshatra, or with the time would nakshatras be changing?
Well, so did you say that in Western astrology you would be a Sagittarius?
In tropical
You have your
astrology, yeah.
chart.
And in sidereal, I'm Scorpio.
And yeah, it goes back. So if you look at okay, so you're talking about where the sun was when you were born. So if you
Yes.
look at your Western chart, and you look at the degrees that your sun is in Sagittarius, and so for each sign there's 30 degrees. 30 times 12 equals 360. So that's a full circle. So if you look at the degrees and you subtract, let's say 23 degrees and 20 minutes off, let's say 23, if you subtract 23 degrees off of where it is in Sagittarius, that's where it would be in Scorpio, because it goes back 23 degrees.
That's right.
And so depending on, so there are a few nakshatras in Scorpio. So depending on where it goes into Scorpio, that's where that's the nakshatra it would be in.
Yeah, maybe I didn't express myself very well, but with the nakshatras, would it be possible in a few hundred years that they would not be the same as the ones now? I mean, with the same planets and characteristics because of the precession?
Well, so I think, well, what the precession does is it moves the relationship of our solar system. So you could think of it as shifting the solar system, but the stars stay pretty much in the same place. So it's just that you're born whereas thousands of years ago you could be born with one sign. Now thousands of years later, if you were born on the exact same day, your sun would be in a different sign, only because you could think of the Earth has shifted its place with respect to the constellations that pretty much stay in the exact same place because they move so much slower than the Earth. So the planets are, everything is still all the same with respect to the influence and the meaning and the symbols, but what changes is that the dates no longer correspond to the same sign. If you're thinking about the sun or any of the other planets with respect to when you were born, the date, I was born in February 11th. So when I was born, the sun was right in between Aquarius and Capricorn, right in between, right on the Capricorn sign. Now, if I was born, let's say 2000 years ago, February 11th, it would be right in Aquarius. It would be Aquarius then. It wouldn't have gone back to Capricorn because it's Capricorn Aquarius, so it goes back. So it's really about the date changing with respect to what planets, what constellations the planets are in. And by what constellations the planets are in is from the point of view of the Earth. If you look at one of the planets, let's say you look at Venus, where is Venus now? So from the point of view of the Earth, Venus is in Aries, let's say. So that means that behind Venus on the circle of stars is the constellation Aries. And then in a few months from now, as Venus moves along, it'll be into Taurus and then Gemini and then Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra. And so it's always from the point of view of the Earth, and the precession of the equinoxes changes where the Earth is with respect to the stars, and it gets more technical. That's it. That's the answer.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. I hope I answered your question.
But I thought it had an influence of the on your personality, on who you can work on yourself depending if you are such a type. But you have answered very differently than what I thought. So thank you.
In relationship to this, I have a question about this, the axis, because I don't know if this is true or not, but remember the earthquake in Japan that created that huge, or the tsunami? I can't remember, maybe 10 years ago or so. It was said that it shifted the Earth's axis ever so slightly. And I'm wondering if that's true, how that would affect this whole system.
I think it might have, I don't know exactly, to be honest, but I don't think it shifted it that much. I don't think it might have shifted it, and I don't know if it did or not, or how it would affect the system. I mean, if it, yeah, that's interesting.
I mean, would it speed up this precession?
Because it's not, even if it shifted this, even if it shifted this part, let's see. It might have shifted it a bit. I believe that the scientists know that. So, but I don't see it was I don't think it was, I don't see it as a significant shift to affect this, because we're talking about 25,000, something that takes 25,000 years to happen. So even a minute shift is very small, would be very small in that scale.
Mhm.
And if it was bigger, like a total act, remember, I don't know if there's a time when people were talking about a big axis shift happening, and the Earth, turning on its axis, but something like that might, but I don't actually think it would change the unless it changed it would have to change the orbit, because remember, astrology is always about where the Earth is with respect to the sun. If you're thinking of the sun sign, or where the Earth is with respect to any of the other planets, but it's always looking at it from the point of view of the Earth. And if it changes, it's really about the orbit. The stars is where the solar system is with respect to the Earth. So whether whether that would have to, if that was a big change, that would affect where the equinoxes happen, because this is all based on where the equinoxes. The equinoxes is when, with respect to the sun, the Earth is getting the same amount. It's like an equal place. So let's say the summer solstice. The summer solstice in the northern hemisphere is when the northern hemisphere is pointing towards the sun. The winter solstice is in the northern hemisphere is when the southern hemisphere is pointing towards the sun. So the Earth goes around northern hemisphere, and then the other side is the southern hemisphere. And so that's the axis that shifts, and and so that, yeah, I don't think it shifted enough to answer your question. I don't think it was a significant amount to change the big picture.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
You were mentioning that this is shifting, the very axis of Earth, of rotating around itself, is drifting
Right.
within 26 years. Is it really defined by the sun? The whole solar system moves around the galaxy with these waves, they were showing, and it is with 26 years. Is this shift of the axis of the Earth is defined by that movement of the whole solar system around the galaxy with these kind of like this, it moves, yeah, every 20 cycles. So maybe that is the defining that shift of the Earth's axis. I was thinking why this happens.
You're talking the 26,000 years? You keep saying 26, but you mean 26,
26,000 years. Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it takes 26,000 years for this to go around like this. So what that does, so if you think of 4 points, 1 point is the equinox. So 1 point is this, let's say this is the summer solstice. It's something darker. This is the sun. So this is the summer solstice. This is the northern hemisphere, the dark one. So the summer solstice is when the sun is when we're in summer up here north. That's when the northern hemisphere is pointing towards the sun. Now, as it goes around the other side, the southern hemisphere now is closer to the sun, and the northern hemisphere is further from the sun. So we have winter, and they have summer in the south. Now, it goes here, and it's pointing. The sun is here, but sideways, the sun is pointing equally to both. That's one of the equinoxes, right? And then so that's, let's say the one is the autumn equinox and one is the spring equinox. That's when the sun is seeing even though the tilt is still there, the sun is equally shooting its rays onto both hemispheres. So it goes around, so summer equinox, So both hemispheres. Now, because this shifts, because that's a natural movement of the planet, just like spinning on its axis and going around the sun, this axis shifts and it takes 25,000 years, a little more than 25,000 years. That's now changes where the equinox points happen. So instead of happening here, they happen back, back, back. And so that's the precession of the equinox. So with respect to the zodiac, from the Earth's point of view, the sun is now in a different zodiacal sign. So when they say the age of Pisces, it means that for approximately 2,000 years, right? 12, 24, it's a little over 2,000 years that these ages last, because it takes 25,000 years for this to shift. And so 2,000 times 12 is 24, plus there's got to be 1,000 in there too. So I don't know. So eventually the first day of spring, so 2,000 years ago, the first day of spring in the Northern Hemisphere was the first day of Aries, 0 Aries, first day of spring. Now that 2,000 years have gone by, it's 23 degrees. Well, now it's 27 degrees, now it's in Pisces. It's gone back. It's at 7 Pisces. It's gone to 7 Pisces. From Aries, it's gone backward to 7 Pisces, where that equinox point is when you look at the sun on the first day of spring in the Northern Hemisphere. And in about 300 years, it'll be Aquarius. We have to go through 7 more degrees backwards from Pisces 7, Pisces 6, Pisces 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, Aquarius. The first day of spring in the Northern Hemisphere will be in the spring equinox from the Northern Hemisphere will be Aquarius, and then we'll be officially in the age of Aquarius. But and I know there's a lot of hope around the age of Aquarius. So just to say this, that these ages, they blend. They don't have an on-off switch. Okay, Aquarius, Pisces, they blend into each other. So learning about how to master air started 100 years ago with airplanes. And learning about the Piscean age had a lot of the healing, a lot of things had to do with Pisces, had to do with water and healing. And now the healing is starting to take over the light, the energy, introducing light into healing has become big. Lasers in healing. That's all the Aquarian age of healing. So we're seeping in, even though we're officially 300 years away, 350, 300 years away. We're seeping into the Aquarian. We're getting, it's like a dimmer switch. One goes on, one goes off. It's hard to visualize. I know it's hard to visualize what I'm saying. I know it, but it's hard to visualize. If I had one of these days, I'm just going to put all the planets and put them all together and just show this in a way that it just can be understood. Because I remember looking at the internet and looking for things a long time ago, and nobody has done anything like that, where it just shows, okay, this is what the precession of the equinox does, and it's easy to describe it in words, but I can never really get it until I visualized it myself. So
I think Gilbert too, that they've got little models now that you can purchase, that they use for school and stuff and for astronomy that can kind of show this. So yeah, I looked into those too, because it's a very different thing when you to see it versus trying to explain 2 or 3 different things that are going on concurrently. But yeah, and I know we're just a little bit over, but any other questions for Gilbert? If I have put Gilbert, your email in the chat box, if anybody would like to contact him. He does do readings, and he does a lot of other healing and woodwork, etc. So please feel free to reach out, or if you want to contact me if you didn't get his email, I can also put you in touch. But any other questions for Gilbert this morning?
This is a very simple question. What shape is our galaxy?
I don't know. It's like milk. No. I don't know I don't know what shape it is. It looks like it's like an obelisk. I don't know. I don't know. That's probably, you could probably get that off an astronomy works.
Okay.
But it's
Okay, well, Gilbert, thank you so much. Thank everybody for showing up today, and thank you again, Gilbert. We wish everyone just a wonderful week. We will not be doing Sunday Sangha for the next couple of weeks. We have our Ayurvedic immersion that starts on April 1st for a week. And so we're going to take off a weekend before and after that. So if you are interested in our Ayurvedic immersion, we've been sending out emails and they're on our website. We'd love for you to join us. But otherwise, we'll see you back. I think it's probably the second week in April. Same for New Perspectives. We ended New Perspectives yesterday, and we'll start up again in about 3 weeks. So thank you all again. Thank you, Gilbert.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
Bye.